Miracles come while we in the fight. Don't give up and hold him tight. You will have a visible battle scar, but never forget who you are and fight, fight, fight.
Hello, and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your host and digital creator. Embracing the Fight is a podcast that was created to help with normalizing the conversation surrounding physical and mental health issues. Let's face it, no one wants to be seen as weak. No one wants to have all of their business in the street. No one wants to sit around saying, you know what, I wonder what they think about me because I have cancer or because I have something that's causing me to have an obstacle in my life, whether it is physical or a mental health issue or concern. So if you've been tuning in with me, you'll know that I am sharing my journey with thyroid cancer. But before we get into the updates concerning the thyroid cancer, I wanted to share with you that my surgeon, my general surgeon, has agreed to come on the show. Yay! Her name is Dr. Montero. She is located in Tampa, Florida. And I'm going to allow her to give more information about who she is, her practice, why she came into medicine, and a little bit about thyroid cancer. So I'm not going to steal her thunder, and I'm not going to share all that information just yet. I'm going to let her do it when she does come on the show, and you guys will absolutely love her because I do. She made this process so easy. And anytime I had any questions or any concerns, she was right there. She made sure she didn't rush through any of my appointments. Anytime I needed to talk or say anything, she would stop whatever she was doing at that point. Even if she was taking notes, writing, reading, whatever, she would stop, give me the eye contact, talk to me, and make everything that I was wondering about. She would make all the bad things about it go away, or she would give me enough education on whatever it was that I was asking about that I felt more comfortable, about it just in general. Okay. So let's talk about silly me. So on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, I've been making these reels and shorts, and I was telling everybody, okay, I'm going to the doctor to get these sutures removed, and oh, we got to go and see, how the scar is going to look, and we want to see what's happening, with the drain hole and with the incision, and all this stuff that I put out there, right? Okay, so check this out. I get to the doctor's office. I sign in and I sit down. And my mind starts going 100 miles per hour. I'm thinking about all the pain that is going to result from having these sutures removed. I'm sitting here saying, oh goodness, anytime you have to have anything removed after surgery, it's painful. Because I had a previous surgery where I had staples. And those staples have to be clipped, in the center and pulled out piece by piece. Well, the other thing about the staples too, if you turn too quick, stand up too quick, move too quick, it feels like somebody is striking a match across, that area. And it was horrible. And when they took them out, it was painful and it got a bit swollen. I had to clean it with a special cleaner, and I had to put some creams and different things on it so it didn't get affected. And I was like, oh goodness, I don't want to have anything, like this on my neck. That is going to be horrible. So they call me back. And of course, the first thing they do is what? They weigh you. All right, so I get on the scale and I'm still 8 pounds down, but I'm celebrating because I know I have on clothes and shoes that probably weigh about 3 pounds. So let's say I've lost 11 pounds. Okay, let's go with that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So anyway, go in, and nurse is talking to me, and I really don't hear, what she's saying, because I'm sitting here dreading the fact that they're about to come in here and snatch these sutures out. Mind you, I don't see anything because there's this protective, like waterproof tape that's here. So I'm sitting here dreading it, and she's checking my blood pressure. She's like, "Oh, your blood pressure is a little bit elevated, but it's not, really high. Is everything okay?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just anticipating, the visit. That white coat syndrome." So anyway, she's like, "Oh, Dr. Montero, she'll be in a second, and she's awesome." And I know this because she was my surgeon. She was awesome. She's absolutely awesome. So the nurse goes out. So I'm left to my own little devices here, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh goodness, it's gonna be horrible." So I'm sitting here saying my neck is a little swollen still. It's numb across the top. It's sore across the bottom. All this bad stuff I'm saying in my head. Why is it like this? Is it draining? What's going on? Do I have fluid buildup? I don't know what's wrong. And in comes Dr. Montero. So she's like, "Well, let me take a look." And here I am with my eyes closed and my teeth clenched, and I'm all tight. And she's like, "I'm just gonna peel this, tape back and have a look at it." And she just, peels it off. And she's like, "Oh, it looks really good." So I'm sitting here going, what do you mean it looks really good? She was like, "Oh yeah, it's healing really nicely." And I'm like, "Healing really nicely, so you don't have to pick or pull anything out?" She was like, "No, the sutures that I was telling you about, they're actually the ones that are on the inside that dissolve." She said, "You usually, close these type of surgeries with a glue." So she had the glue there and that protective, tape. Well, anyway, she says, "Well, all you really have to do now is go home, take a shower, be gentle with that area, and you can use soap and water to get the rest of the glue off." She said it may take a little while for it to come off, but just keep doing that. And she said also, if you want to reduce the appearance of the scar, then get you a silicone based scar gel and make sure that you're massaging it in to help with the scar tissue and to help with the appearance, of the actual scar. So I'm still sitting here going, "So that's it?" And she was like, "Is that why you had your eyes closed?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was expecting this to hurt." And then she was like, "No, no, no, it's not. It's not going to hurt at all." She's like, the worst of it is gone." So then she starts to tell me that because the mass was so large, that there's a potential that when it was growing, it came in contact with this blood vessel, and with it being in contact with it, there's a small probability that some of the cancer cells could have gotten into my bloodstream. So she told me that I need to set up an appointment with my endocrinologist, and from that point they would determine whether or not I needed RAI, which is radioactive iodine. Radioactive iodine is what's used to eliminate thyroid cancer cells. So I'm sitting there going, "Okay, I'm gonna need that, maybe, what else, comes along with that?" And she was like, "Well, if they determine that RAI is needed, then a PET scan may or may not be required." She was like, "But I don't think you'll need a PET scan because your thyroid basically contained the tumor. It didn't spread to nearby lymph nodes or anything, because she took out several lymph nodes and they all came back benign, on the pathology report." So, I was okay with this. So as I'm leaving, her office, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm like, "Man, this was a lot better than I thought it would be." But I went on ahead, got in the car, and took another little video, let everybody see, what it looked like afterwards. And I went and I got some advanced scar control gel to use. I also ordered some to try, and I've been putting it on, and you guys can see a bit of a difference since my video on Instagram and my video on YouTube that shows the scar itself. So my next appointment is actually in February. And the other thing too that Dr. Montero was talking about was the potential for me to have lab work to see how well the thyroid hormone replacement is actually working for me, whether or not they have to take it up or down or anything like that, because everything else, appeared normal. Everything else looks really good. But then the endocrinologist that comes in, they actually have to do all the lab work to see, what changes, if any, need to be made. Okay. So I'll talk more about that in February, when it actually happens. And the appointment is on February the 8th. So I'm looking forward to see, what all they've come up with, concerning my journey and my healing, my treatment. All right. So that's just the physical, side of it all. And I honestly find it very difficult sometimes to talk about my mental state. I say that because I consider myself to be a very strong, very level-headed person. And a lot of my friends come to me for advice or just to talk or just to share things with me to get my opinion. And if you are the one that's always crying or the one that's always going through difficulties or having issues and you're not in a good mental space, then you're not necessarily the go-to person, right? So let me just be honest. When I was told that I had thyroid cancer, first thing that went through my mind was, again, because I had cancer back in 2004 and 2005. It was called dermatofibrosarcoma protuberans. It was a slow-growing cancer that was in my left foot. And initially, I was told that I would probably lose my foot. So that's not something you want to hear, when you're in your mid to late 20s, especially if you're playing tennis, if you're running, if you're active, if you're doing all these things. You don't want to hear that. The little selfish person inside of you says you want to be whole and you want to be perfect regardless of what's going on, in your life. You want to be right. You want to be the mirror or the image of health. Well, I'm sitting here saying, you know what? This is round 2. Lord have mercy, round 2. What did I do to deserve this? Because the first time I had cancer, that type of cancer only affects about 1% of the population. And I haven't looked at these statistics, but I do understand that thyroid cancer is not as common as some other cancers. And I just happen to get that as well. Okay. So I'm sitting here and I'm saying, everything in my life is not the way that I want it to be. At that point, I did not know that papillary carcinoma had such a great survival rate if it's caught, in the early stages. I was sitting here saying, you know what, I got to take this medicine for the rest of my life. I'm going to have this scar. I don't know what this medicine is going to do to me. And I don't feel well. I just don't know, what's going on or what to do. And I didn't know anyone who had thyroid cancer. Mind you, I had lost aunts, uncles, cousins, friends to cancer. And here I am with round 2. And it's like, will I make it through this time? So at work, I'm still having to be, the boss, the strong person, the go-to person. At home, I'm still having to take care of everything, all the bills, all the cleaning, all the cooking, everything like that, because it's really just me and my nephew right now. I was married at one point, but that's a whole different story, and that's not one that's pleasant to discuss either. But I said that when I did this podcast that I would do an episode on that and the impact that divorce has on your mental health. And I'm thinking about all these things that I've gone through in my life, and I'm like, at this point I'm saying, God, what gives? And I'm like, God, I've always tried to live right. I've tried to give. I've tried to do the right thing. But then a little voice said, this is not even about you. You have to get, out of this little pity party. You have to find a way to let out these emotions. You can't keep holding them in and pretending that they are not there. God kept bringing different people in my life that were speaking the things that I should have been speaking to myself. That I was living beneath who I was and whose I was. So I started watching different podcasts, and there was one in particular where I was actually watching Anthony O'Neill, The Table with Anthony O'Neill, and he started talking about going to therapy. And I'm sitting here, looking at his life, and I'm saying, you know what? He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have any debt. Everything in his life looked like it's going in a positive direction, yet he still needs therapy. So I'm like, why am I above the thought of having therapy? Therapy doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that you're actually seeking help. You're trying to grow, and you're trying to do better and be better. So with that, I reached out to a counselor, to a therapist, and I laid everything on the line. I told her, that there were so many places and things that I had failed in my life that I just didn't know what to do or where to go with that. And she was like, well, what do you mean failed? I said, well, I went through a divorce, so my marriage, failed. And I said, I don't have any children. I'm not a mother, so I failed. I said, I am working at a company when I feel like I should be owning a company. Failed. I started writing a book that I never finished writing. Failed. And at that moment, she stopped me and she says, you still living. Those things are not failures. Those things are the steps that will help you get to your success. You just cannot give up. You have to know, Erica, that when you're building a building, you can't build a building around you, because all the things that are hurting you, the things that are harming you, the stuff that you think you're failing at is right inside of that building with you. So you have to get outside of yourself. You have to get outside of your circumstances. You can't just look at where you are and say, this is where I'm always going to be. It's not like that. Life is not that way. You have the opportunity to change. You have the opportunity to be the very best version of yourself. You have to speak it. You have to encourage yourself. Because after I had sat down and I told her a lot about how I encourage people, my friends, family, strangers, all that, she was like, well, what do you do to encourage yourself? So I didn't have an answer. I couldn't tell you what I've done to encourage myself, because I had done absolutely nothing to encourage myself. All I did was get up every day and say, I'm going to do X. But that X, Y, or Z never pertained to encouraging myself. I wouldn't even allow myself to cry when things hurt me, because I felt like the tears weren't anything but a release of moisture. But I realized that sometimes when you cry, you do release the pain. It's like a flood that comes from your system that needs to be released at some point. I've been told that a lot of stuff doesn't bother me, but that's from other people's perception, because I mold things over. I think things over. I question myself. I want to give the most perfect product on whatever it is that I'm working on. And it's always at my expense, at my mental expense, I should say. So after having these sessions and talking with her, I've decided that from this point forward, and that's at the point, of therapy, that I will continue to speak life, not just into my life, but every morning I get up, I say, you know what? Today is going to be a great day because you were allowed to see it. That means I have another chance to do something right, to do something positive, to do something good, to pour greatness into the world. And that's partially why I believe that this podcast is happening. Sure, I have thyroid cancer, and yes, I can tell you about everything that has happened in that process. But at the same time, it's hard, very, very hard for me to just open up about the things that I've had going on in my life, about the things that I have accepted, about the things that I'm not so proud of. I'm a work in progress, but I realize that if I didn't realize that I was a work in progress and I thought I was a finished product, then there's no way that I would be able to continue to move forward and grow and do greater things. So I'm asking today, take mental inventory. Sit down and say, what is it that I bring to the world? What is it that I do great? Why is it that the Lord is slowing me down? For instance, I've talked to a few people that are dealing with illnesses, or they're dealing with children that have issues, things of that nature. And it's brought their world to a standstill. And through their revelation, I see that God is also speaking to them. He's also slowed them down so that they can be a living ministry. And this is what I am working on right now. Though I am not a physician, and though I am not a therapist, and I am not a pastor or a minister, I do know and love God and know what He can and will do in your life. So again, I ask that at the end of this podcast, you reach out to those that you love. Do the things that you love. Write down your goals, but make those goals realistic. Don't set yourself up for failure. For instance, if you wanted to sit down and build a house out of toothpicks, you have to know how many toothpicks you needed, and you have to know the size of the house. You could do a little 10 square inch house, or you could do a 1,400 square foot house. Either way, you have to take the time to say, how am I going to do this? One will be done much quicker than the other, but you can't do one in just one sitting. You have to plan it over time, such as life. When things become great and large, you have to realize that you have to take it small bits at a time to conquer it. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with Embracing the Fight. I want us to conquer mental and physical health issues and concerns, one conversation at a time. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that this message blessed you. And if you have a moment, please, please go on Facebook, check out my page, Embracing the Fight. Let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know if you have any other questions or suggestions about different shows that you would like to see or hear in the future. This is Embracing the Fight, and I am your digital host and creator, Erica Lamar.